Hey guys, I wanted to do a video on Medford Praetorians. I've been doing a lot of research and I've purchased a good amount of Medford knives, and I really do enjoy watching YouTube videos for one, entertainment, and two, for the information that I can find out in them. So I just figured I'd make a quick video and hopefully be able to give back. So if you're looking for a Medford Praetorian or you had some questions, I hope that this might answer some of your questions. And kind of show off a little bit of my collection, and hopefully you'll get something out of it. So I'll just kind of go over the naming. There's three different sizes of Praetorians, and then there's the big flagship model. So we'll start from left to right. This is a micro Praetorian. This is a Praetorian Genesis. This is a full-size Praetorian, and this, of course, is a Praetorian tie. So you have to be a little bit careful because what Medford does is they put a letter at the end of the Praetorian. So, for instance, they'll say a micro Praetorian T, which would indicate the last letter would indicate whether it has a titanium slab, or if it says G, it would be a G10 slab. So a lot of people online will put, "Hey, I have a micro Praetorian tie" because it stands for titanium, but the actual tie model, and they only make one full size model, is called the Praetorian tie. So when you talk to Medford, or you talk to someone who knows about Medfords, if you say Praetorian tie, they automatically assume you're referring to this very large, heavy Praetorian tie. But we'll kind of go into that a little bit further. But I just wanted to compare them really quickly to a knife that everybody knows. That is a small Sebenza right there, and this is a large Sebenza. So let's get these opened up here. And just so you can see the size differences. So you can see Praetorians are not supposed to be the fastest, most flickable knives. If you've watched my other videos, I actually really only collected flippers. In fact, I was into kind of custom flippers, but I fell in love with the Praetorian line. The first Praetorian I picked up was a tie, and I just really thought it was quite cool. So I ended up buying quite a bit of the Medford line. And so one thing I really enjoy about them is just how big and bulky they are. I didn't find anything on the market that kind of had the same feel that they have. I'll take away the Sebenza here. And they're not necessarily a custom knife maker, but they do make a ton of different variations of the knives. So you can get a lot of different variety out of the knives. And another thing is that they are pretty available. I consider myself a knife purchaser. I don't necessarily use them a ton, but I'm not in it for the money either. I'm not in it to make a huge collection and then sell them on the back end and make some profit or whatever. So I like the fact that you can go to a knife shop, a dealer, order it online, and do a bunch of stuff and kind of get the knife that you want, and get it in your hands without having a pretty long wait. But they do really have a custom feel to them, in my opinion. Like I said, I do have several custom knives, and especially the Praetorian tie, I feel has a level of quality that kind of warrants a semi-custom tag that people give to them. But they just, for me, they're just a very, very cool design. But let me just get into some of the technical specifications to begin with. We saw the size in comparison with the Sebenzas. So you can decide kind of how carryable they are to you and what size you want to go with. But as far as the weight goes, the small Sebenza is 2.8 ounces here. The large Sebenza is 4.6. So we'll get those out of the way again. The micro Praetorian. Now, again, this is the T version with the titanium slab on them. The G10 version is going to be a little bit lighter, but this guy here weighs 4.9. This one here, and this is the Genesis, weighs 7 ounces. Now, this one does have the G10, so there is some weight savings. So a full-size Praetorian T is going to be a little bit heavier, but this one weighs 7.6 ounces. And, of course, this guy weighs 12.55 ounces. So this guy is pretty heavy right there. Aside from the weight, um, I can tell you that I never had a problem with the weight. Uh, I kind of equate it to the first time you carry a smartphone, it's going to feel heavy. If you've never carried a phone before. But after you get used to it, I think we all are carrying our phones. In fact, that's what I'm using shooting this video, and we don't even notice the weight anymore. So I think an iPhone, just for reference, weighs around 5 ounces, which would be around the weight of a micro Praetorian, and a 5 plus, or excuse me, a 7 plus. Which is what I use, weighs about 7 ounces, 8 ounces. So, in between these two here. And I still remember when I upgraded from my 7 to my 7 Plus, I thought, holy smokes, I'm never going to be able to carry this phone. I actually thought about returning the phone, but I like the better camera on it. And, now I pick up the small phones and I think, oh my gosh, those are pretty small. So that's kind of how I feel about the Medfords as well. So which one do I carry the most? I can tell you right now, I enjoy carrying the tie the most, by far. However, it's not something kind of like having a large cell phone. It's not something that came naturally. I put it in my pocket. It's not a ton of weight. Like I said, it's about 12 ounces. So it feels like maybe an iPhone and keys in your pocket, weight size. But it is a pretty beefy pocket knife. So I carried it around because I enjoyed carrying the big overbuilt knife around. It was kind of a very cool feeling, and I just got used to it. And now when I pull it out to cut boxes or pull it out to cut whatever, I get the enjoyment of having a pretty big knife on me. But I don't really, like I said, when it's on me, I don't necessarily feel it as a burden. I definitely know it's there, but I don't feel it as a burden. So the knife that I use the absolute most, though, is the Micro Praetorian. The Micro Praetorian is the right size. The Micro Praetorian will fit in my suit pocket, and I actually don't use it with the clip because I don't want the clip hanging off. So I just put it in my pocket with the keys, go to work, cut boxes, cut envelopes, everything is fine. And if people do see it, if they're walking in the office, it's a cool looking knife, but they're not necessarily scared of it. And I know that's not my problem. That would be really their problem. But it's pretty cool to have a knife that someone recognizes and says, "Wow, that's a cool pocket knife," but is not necessarily intimidated by it. I do live and work in California at a very large company, so you have to be sensitive to that sort of thing. But it's also not a knife. I'd say it's a knife that people do notice, and even the guys that collect knives notice it right away as well, so they'll know what it is. And you'll get a lot of people that come out of the woodwork. So people are in my office. I'm opening a knife. I leave it on the desk, and I can tell you, since I've been carrying it over the last couple months, I've actually found at my work that there's a handful of knife collectors that I didn't necessarily know were knife collectors because they saw the knife and they're like, "Wow, that's a cool knife." So it's a good conversation piece whether someone's intimidated by a knife or not. Now this knife here, I actually picked up most of these from Plaza Cutlery. It's a local knife shop, but this one came from a knife show that they host, and he buys the knives um, uh, from Medford, and then he'll resell them in the store. That's just a cool knife. I thought it would be the perfect size, but it's kind of weird. These two knives that I thought would be a great size turned out to kind of just be stuck in the middle. So I either carry the Praetorian tie or I carry the Micro Praetorian. So when I'm in a suit, this guy is too big. And so I just carry the Micro Praetorian. When I'm not in a suit, I have two modes, man. I go in a suit or I go in basketball shorts and a t-shirt and flip-flops, and that's it. And believe it or not, this tie carries perfectly well in basketball shorts. Now, for just a quick disclaimer, I'm a bigger guy, so I'm not a small guy. I can carry the knife in my pocket. It's no big deal. Like I said, I carry keys and kind of knickknacks in the pocket, so it kind of blends in for me. So if you're wearing skinny jeans, which I don't wear, or you're wearing something that's hugs your body, I'm guessing that this knife would be a little bit tougher to carry. So that's gonna kind of depend on you and what you're wearing. But for me, for basketball shorts, it's perfect. It fits just fine. Now, let's talk quickly about some things you might see when you're buying a knife. So the Praetorian tie has this clip, and that's how you can tell in pictures whether it's a Praetorian tee or a Praetorian tie. Now, from the outline of the knife, if they're stacked on top of each other, they're actually identical. So the only differences are going to be not pretty much, the thickness, and that's it. And you can see the thickness. Um, or this pocket clip here. Now this is a pocket clip unique to the Praetorian tie. So if you're looking for a tie and you see something marked on eBay or whatever, but it's a lot cheaper than you expect, and you're like, is that a tie or just a full size Praetorian? Look at this clip. If it's got this Medford logo here and not a clip like this, then you know it's a tie, and it's the thicker one. There are other clips. Now Medford just changed their clips. These are all the new clips, but I'll show you another clip here. You'll see a lot of these clips on these 3 models of knives. Those are just the older clips. You know, Medford changes things as they go. They kind of, you know, either get feedback from their customers or make improvements in manufacturing, whatever they do. So I have knives with this type of clip, and I can tell you that it's a very strong clip. You know, it's strong to go in your pocket. It's strong to pull out. It makes a sound when you pull it out. But for me, like I said, basketball shorts, I prefer this type of clip. So you'll see the newer clips on the later knives, so you'll kind of get an idea of kind of what you'd like. But in my opinion, if you're wearing kind of loose clothes, you go with these types of clips. If you're wearing like tactical clothes and things like that, this one does seem a lot thicker and a lot more rugged. It's just for my preference. I like the older clips, which is why I have them here. So let's talk about thickness really quickly, because this is what you're paying for with the tie. The blade stock on the tie is 2.260, and the blade stock on the regular Praetorian, if I can get that to stand up, is 0.190. And actually something that's pretty cool is the Micro and the Genesis and the full-size Praetorian are all identical in width as well. So if you take a look, this blade, and this blade, and the scales are all the same size. So actually for thickness and feel, the only thing you're shrinking down is the profile on these 3 knives. Why I went with this knife and why I enjoy carrying it, to be honest with you, is just it's a Praetorian tie. I don't think there's a huge advantage or disadvantage. Now you can see the weight difference, under 8 ounces and over 12 ounces. So it's a pretty big difference. But you know, for me, I know a lot of guys are out there like, man, knives are tools, and you know, as a tool, I have to have the, you know, lightweight. It has to disappear, but then they end up spending, you know, thousands of dollars on flipper knives. You know, for me, the reason why I carry a knife is not because I have to, because there's another tool out there. There's scissors, and there's this, and I've, you know, I went a long time never carrying a pocket knife, and I was okay. So I carry these things because I like them. I choose to carry them. So I just wanted something that I liked in my pocket. So that's why I went with the tie. I think that, let's talk about price real quick. I think for me, I think that everything's expensive, but obviously I think it's worth it. However, if you're buying knives just to flip them and resell them, the way Medford has it structured, it's kind of like buying a new car, right? If you buy it and you sell it a month later and it's used, usually for most things besides, I guess, other knives, is you don't get your money back out of them. Well, that's how Medfords are as well. They produce a lot of them. You're not going to, quote unquote, make your money, get your money back out of them. There's a good secondary market, but it is a little bit less. I choose to buy them new from dealers because, number one, I feel like everybody takes apart their knives when they get them, and I used to do the same thing, and I feel like half the knives on eBay and on blade forums and stuff like that are kind of jacked up. Like, they took it apart, they didn't like it, they put it back together, it doesn't do something quite right, so they're going to unload it. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, that could be, you know, just be assuming something that's not true, but I see that an awful lot, especially I think I saw one that said, hey, Medford, brand new, except for both pivots are screwed up, you know, with scratches on them, and it looks like someone took a tool and tried to dig them out. So Medford does say that if you open the knife, that they're not under warranty anymore. And I think, you know, again, I'm not a knife collector. I haven't been in the knife world long. It seems reasonable to me as a consumer. So for instance, if I buy a computer and I open it up and I send it back, my guess is that, you know, they're going to say you opened it up, and maybe they'll charge me, maybe they won't. That's been my experience with Medford. I actually sent some knives back for sharpening. I wanted to change some stuff. I actually dealt with the company directly, and for the most part, they are going to warranty everything. They just don't want you opening those knives up, and if you cause damage to that knife, they will charge you, which I think is a totally fine policy. So I'm not offended by the policy, but like I said, I think a lot of people are extremely offended that they don't want you taking apart the knives. I can tell you, just my experience with the knives, they are excellent tolerances. They are, everything's very tight on them. So if you kind of, I see what they're saying. If you don't know what you're doing and you kind of, you know, take it apart but don't put it back exactly right, the knife may not work properly. They are excellent with service. So the knives I send in, they have them out either same day or 24 hours later, and that includes sharpening or tightening something or doing whatever they need to do. So the only issue you have is going to be paying for shipping to them, and that's about it. And just waiting. And I know, if you're like me, that's the worst part, right? You want your knife and you want it now. You just want to open it up and play with it. So that is something that you're gonna have to decide as a consumer if you want to deal with a company with that policy. But that being said, I can tell you that they have treated me 100% fairly, and I don't want this to be a Medford commercial. Of course, I like the knives, but I do want to talk about what's good and what's bad with them and what issues I've had with them. It's not just all amazingness. But as far as dealing with the company, they've been very fair with me. I send a knife in. Sometimes they charge me if I did something to the knife. If it's warranty, then they didn't charge me. And, again, I can see their position of not wanting you to open the knives. So let's talk about what is negative. So the only thing I've ever seen online as a negative for these knives is, one, they're too heavy. That's a fact. They are heavy, but for me, it doesn't bother me. And two, they don't cut. Never found that. Again, I'm not a heavy user. I'm not performing surgery with these knives. But man, as far as like cardboard, anything office task related, they're sharp as hell and they work. Everything. So I thought that this one was going to be an issue. It's actually kind of funny. I actually use it to open up envelopes and the tie, and I get it. It's a big, bulky. I mean, look at how big this blade stock is, and I'll just stick it in an envelope and open it up. And is it the perfect tool for that? Not really, but does it work? Absolutely, it works fine. It's not in maybe that extra half a second it takes you to put the knife into the envelope. Maybe that really drives some people absolutely nuts and crazy. But for me, carrying around a knife like this, using it as a tool, it does work. It's worth it for me to do it. That's going to be something for you to decide. I think the hardest thing, you ever get those little tiny zip ties that are all super scrunched up and they hold something in there? That's like the hardest thing I've ever found to cut. And I used to, before I carried the Medfords, I used to have a Chris Reeves Mandy in my bag all the time, and I always felt that cutting something hardcore like that, and I know that's not necessarily hardcore, but those things can be pretty thick, was like, I felt like the Mandy might not be able to take it. Now it always was able to cut things, and the Mandy never broke, so I don't want to talk smack about it, but you'll never get that feeling with the Medford knives. The fit and finish has been great. They've all locked up rock solid, and you just have the confidence when you're cutting something like that I guarantee you that zip tie will break before this knife breaks. You just have that feeling. So even those little pesky little zip ties, this knife takes out easily and pretty well. So all these three knives, or all four of them, I should say, the only issue that I've seen are weight, size, and can they cut. And I assure you they can cut. Weight and size is going to be dependent on you. And then I think my personal opinion is why Medford really gets a lot of flack is the price point. I think it is fairly expensive. Again, in my opinion, that there's value there. But just for an idea, for those of you who haven't been shopping for one, a Micro Praetorian G10, I think online right now as of today, and it's the end of May 2017, with I think it's $550 if I'm not mistaken. I think they just did a price pricing. They just corrected some pricing, or not corrected. They changed some pricing on their website. So I encourage you to check it out. But for $550, and I think it comes with SV. I'm not a big steel guy, so I don't know. These are all D2. And I've never had a problem with D2. I have a wicked edge. I sharpen them, and for the most part, I haven't even sharpened a lot of them. Some of them I'll sharpen when I first get the knife, and I'm not talking about a Medford. I'm just talking across the board. But then I'll just strop them, and I have some leather strops for it. And all three of these are razor sharp. I've stropped this one, I've stropped this one, and these two are still completely factory, but razor sharp. Um, so I mean, I'm not sure. Maybe I'm just not a heavy user. I do live by the beach, so everyone said D2. If I believe the forums, D2 rusts out in 30 seconds and it won't hold an edge. So I haven't found that either. I do have some Medfords and other steels. I just haven't used them, but I think they're converting to SV35 or S35VN or whatever it is. Again, I apologize. I'm not a huge steel guy. So for 550 bucks, you can pick yourself up this one. Again, I think that's one of the reasons why he's not well liked, because that is a pretty high price point. I think the Chris Reeves are still about 350 bucks around there, so he's a little bit higher. But you know, not all the made in the USA rah stuff, but it does cost a lot of money to run a business. And again, I try to support brick and mortar stores if I can, and I try to support companies that do all their manufacturing in the U.S. It's just something that I've chosen to do. So, you know, personally, I understand that you can get better materials and better, you know, choices. I should suppose, and from Chinese companies, but I think that's a decision that we all have to make on our own. The way I see it is, if you have to buy a Chinese or a foreign product, you know, I'm for that. I'm for the free trade, and I like there being options. But if you have to buy one and truly like you're on a budget and you can't spend the money, and you know you want to buy a cheaper product because it fulfills the same role as an American product would, but you simply couldn't afford the American product, I'm totally for that. But with knives and toys, it's a different thing for me. Like, I carry around a knife because of the way it makes me feel. So having these things made in the USA, you know, it just adds to the overall experience of owning that particular knife. So do I buy into it? You know, I think there is some value there. And as long as you keep it close, what I mean by that is, you know, as long as there's something special about these knives, and I think they are, because the design, and like I said, there's nothing like them on the market, then, you know, I don't mind spending a few extra bucks on these things. Um, that's pretty much. Oh, I will go over two negatives on the tie, since I have been carrying it around. You probably don't see a lot of reviews on anyone who's carried around a tie extensively. Blade stock fine, sharpness fine, weight fine. Two things that have been an issue with me are, number one, that pocket clip with that little M, it sticks down into here. That grabs me sometimes. So I guess some people call it a hot spot on the videos. I've never used a knife enough, like chopping down a tree or something, to get an actual hot spot on the handle. I think people grab these knives and they're like, oh, I feel a hot spot here, a hot spot there. Now, this knife feels completely comfortable in my hand, but when I go to grab it, sometimes I'll get poked by that little M logo right there. So that is one thing. Another thing is, just with the thickness of this knife, I carry it in my pocket. And like I said, I'm wearing basketball shorts, and I'll try to show you here. This is a pretty wide gap, and it has to be. And I can't really get my fingers in there because the tip is buried in there pretty well. But what you can get in there apparently is the cloth, the material from your pockets, and they'll go in there and they'll rub against it. And like I said, this thing is razor sharp, and it was poking holes and cutting tiny little holes in my pocket. And I know everyone's probably saying, oh, geez, a knife that cuts a hole in your pocket. And that's just because that gap right there, and kind of the Nike shorts that I was wearing, it just fits in there. So what I did, and I love carrying the knife this much, is I went out and bought clothing patches, those little patches, little stickers, and I stuck it right at the spot on the inside of the pocket so you can't see it, right where it would engage that tip, so the material wasn't so soft that it would go down there. Now, I have carried this. Of course, I do wear cargo pants, jeans, and stuff like that. I've carried it with that. That's not an issue at all. I'm talking completely like very flowy basketball athletic workout shorts. I've carried this with the suit, no problem at all. So for some reason with the athletic shorts, just with the very flowy material, if a little tiny material gets in there and catches the tip, just because it's so sharp, it'll snag. So like I said, I get those clothing patches, patch it in there, good to go. So that's basically it. So I don't endorse the company. I'm not paid to do this, and you know, this. I hope this is not a Medford commercial. I just hopefully gave a little bit of information. But from my experience, if you don't have a Medford and you're looking and you're kind of looking at this video to get a gauge on the size, I would start with a micro Praetorian. It's something that you can carry every day. It's something that you can use, and it's just kind of a good way to get a feel of the thickness and the build quality. However, if you're a knife guy and you just want to be impressed by a knife that isn't out there, you go to a knife shop and you just want to see something quality, something unique, something that you haven't seen before, I would check out the Thai. Oh, and as far as pricing goes, they start at 550 and they roll all the way up to 1,200 bucks. So everything here is in between those. I think this might be 600, and this one I think is 600 as well. And I think with the titanium slab it's 700. So the Thai is definitely by far the most expensive. All right, well, this video is pretty long now, so I'm going to cut it off here. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask, and I appreciate you watching to the end of the video. All right, thanks a lot. Bye.